Aloha and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Got Your Six podcast. This six-question podcast brings together high performers to share their methods, strategies, and ideas, delivered in an informative and, most importantly, actionable way that'll help you lead yourself and those around you from the battlefield to the boardroom. Coming to you every episode, I'm your host, Tony Nash. And into the breach.
Nothing mentioned on this podcast is an endorsement or opinion of the Department of Defense.
I got your six, we got your back. Got your six, we got your back. Got your six, we got your back. I got your six.
Awesome. We got a great episode today. Mike Erwin was with us, Lieutenant Colonel currently in the United States Army Reserves. He's an educator and also a leadership coach. You've probably seen Mike's, he has touched so many different lives in so many different ways. He is the founder and executive director of Team RWB, also known as Red, White, and Blue, a nonprofit that seeks to enrich veterans' lives by connecting them with their communities through physical and social activities. He is also the co-founder and president of the Positivity Project, a nonprofit group that aims to empower the youth to build positive relationships, and co-authored the 2017 book, Lead Yourself. Mike is a huge believer that you need to lead yourself first before you can lead others, essentially servant leadership at its core. He's passionate about leadership, service, community building, and people improvement, with the goal to inspire others by sharing motivating messages, stories, and his experience as a leader, educator, and soldier. He is a graduate of the United States Military Academy, class of 2002, served on 3 combat tours with the 1st Cavalry Division and 3rd Special Forces Group. After his 3rd deployment, he attended the University of Michigan, where he received his master's in positive psychology and leadership. Mike, thanks for being here.
Hey, Tony, great to be here. Fired up.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I've been a team RWB member essentially from when it started, back when I was a cadet and graduated in 2010. So it's cool to see what's happened in the last 11 years, and just everything you've been able to accomplish along the way. And I just can't wait to get into it. And now that I wouldn't say you're not out of the Army, right? You're still in the reserves. But Is there anything daily you kind of implement from your time in the military? I'd love for you to talk about
Big
that.
time. Yeah. I mean, I think part of it is what I just kind of call the quick start to the day. That's pretty important. I remember a day at West Point or, really in the Army where you kind of have these slow wake ups. So I've become a real big believer of taking that discipline and that practice with me out of the military. And that is, how to have that good, strong, solid routine. I'm not as productive on the physical activity every single morning like I was when in the military, when I'm on active duty, but I've found a way to really start weaving that back in as consistently as possible in the morning. And, if you're going to do, I tell people this all the time, when you do physical activity, like do it in the morning, you reap the benefits of it all day long. And the military trained that in me. And so I'm working on getting that right just about every day. But for the meantime, that's something I definitely look to my time in the military for, the reminder about why that's so important to do.
And firm believer in morning PT, as we call it, physical training. I know you're a huge fan of the Jacob's Ladder. Is that right? I'd love for you to talk about that.
Yeah, I believe company's actually based out of Buffalo, New York, by the way.
Yeah, it is.
So, such a phenomenal exercise. My 2009 deployment to Afghanistan, I was the intelligence officer for half of Afghanistan with the Special Operations Task Force. So we had SEALs and DEA and Green Berets and all kinds of folks. And so I just worked like relentlessly on that mission because it was such an honor to work with people of such high caliber and doing my best as an intel officer, to make a difference. But I took time usually in the middle of the day at around like 2 to 3:30, as long as there wasn't a troops in contact, a firefight going on.
Right.
I would go spend about an hour 15 or so in the gym. And and again, going back to some of these upstate New York connections, a Buffalo native, Steve Notary was my workout partner. He played strong safety for the Citadel. And, we would hit the gym, we would work out really hard and all that. But on that 09 rotation, I fell in love with the Jacob's Ladder. And I remember getting on it for the first time. And I think I got like 3 minutes before tapping out, like, man, I gotta go sit down. And I worked my way, my senior NCO, Blake Horst, and I, over a master sergeant, over the next 4 months, would talk so much trash to each other. And we got to the point, I think I got up to 48 minutes without stopping. And I think he was right around there. We were pretty much neck and neck. But bottom line is I am back at it. I ordered it with the tax return a few years ago. It has been collecting dust for a while, but I'm back on it with a vengeance. And I started out at, again, 3 or 4 minutes again.
Right.
I'm already up to 18 or 20 minutes right now. I climbed 2,000 feet the other day.
Wow.
And just loving the Jacob's ladder.
That's awesome. And it's one of those perpetual, it's this ladder that's on this chain. So that as fast as you go, it's going to keep up with you. So if you slow down, it'll kind of slow otherwise. But if you're cruising, you got to,
it's very high cardio
pace, right?
Absolutely. And the hard part when you go slow is it turns into like a squat, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're going slow, like you got to use it. So you're paying the piper one way or the other.
Right.
They're paying it with your ticker. Your heart rate is 160, 165, 170, and you're going fast, and there's minimal impact on your legs, but there's a big impact on your heart and your lungs. Yeah. Or you're going slower and you're like, you're grinding it out. Your heart rate stays lower, but your legs are having to work a lot harder from a muscular standpoint.
Yeah. No, it's if you find a Jacob's ladder in your gym or wherever, like definitely try it out. I wouldn't say try, like Mike said, go for about 3 to 5 minutes if you can. It's phenomenal exercise. I'm a huge fan. If we had room in the gym here at the house, we would probably have one. But that would take a lot of coercing into my wife just saying yes. So, I mean, we talked, Team RWB, Positivity Project, Lead Yourself. When you released that in 2017, you got the other book coming out later this year. Is there one book or course or even a YouTube video or something that you always kind of constantly go back to that has really impacted your life and helped you do all these great things and put out these great messaging?
Yeah, I think that, one book I learned a lot from on one of my deployments, and most of these books are ones that I read while deployed. For whatever reason, your brain is more malleable. It's, I think, more receptive of the message, but was called 100 Ways to Motivate Yourself by Steve Chandler. It was like very tactical, practical advice, but a lot of just interesting thoughts. He's like a motivational coach and a motivational speaker out of Arizona. And that was pretty good. But for me, by far, the most instrumental book has been The Alchemist by Paolo Coelho. It's a fictional story, but it feels very, very real. Absolutely incredible journey. It documents Santiago, the shepherd boy throughout this journey of life. And why I love it so much is it's just so powerful because it basically, in a much more eloquent way than everything happens for a reason, it makes that point.
Right.
And it can be dangerous when we tell that to people, everything happens for a reason, don't worry about it. But the reality is, if you take that approach and that view into life, that the setbacks and the adversity and the mistakes that you make, while it feels like in the moment, you're like, oh man, that was terrible. What a big mistake. If you can learn to see that for what it is it's, and I said this the other day, but a setback is a set up for a comeback. That's not Pollyanna. That's not wishful thinking. That's like a real thing. Do you have that mindset? And in that book, it makes such an incredible point that, you can achieve all the success and do this and do that and then lose it all. And then think that you're not going to get back, but then you can build it up and then you build up something back that's even stronger than what you had before. And then you can lose it all. And then you can find something that it's just such a beautiful message that we all need to be reminded of. And everyone who's read The Alchemist is out there nodding their head, viciously right now. And for those who have not, it's about 130 pages. Short read, and you can get through it. I read it about every couple of years because it's just that powerful for me. No,
and like you said, it's extremely powerful to be reminded, our failures set us up for our successes, right? So I'm sure there's been a failure, many failures. I'd love for you to go into one failure that's really ended up being your greatest success.
Yeah, geez, a whole bunch of them. When people ask this question on a podcast, there's too many to count, and I don't like to give the same answer because when people who listen to the podcast are wait, I've heard you talk about that one before.
Yeah.
I think that I'll just give you an example of the Positivity Project. So co-founded it with West Point 04 grad, Jeff Bryan, great American. We're bringing character education through the lens of positive psychology to currently right now 675 schools, about 400,000 students across America. And, we started the organization, as a nonprofit, with a general business model around philanthropy. Yeah. And this is, by the way, some kind of advice for people out there who are ever thinking about starting a nonprofit. My advice now to everybody is think through your revenue model, because whether you're a for-profit or not-for-profit, doesn't really matter. You need to have a revenue model if you want to pay yourself and or other people to do the work. And so we made this prediction that that if we sit there and we can show the value and we can point to what I've done with Team Red, White, and Blue, that this would be something foundations and funders would want to get behind. And what we found over and over and over again those first 2 years of the organization is that foundations don't really like to focus character education and social emotional learning. They say, hey, schools have budgets for that. If it's good, they're going to pay for it. Right. And boy, was that frustrating to hear over and over and over again in 2016 and 17 and into 18. And finally, we just had the realization of like, well, if we're going to make it, we're going to really transform the future of the country through social emotional learning, then we got to find a way to be able to generate the revenue to do it. And so bottom line is like big mistake up front on the revenue model. And then started to say, okay, well, we're going to sustain ourselves not by spending a lot of time seeking grants and foundation funding. We're going to build a business. We're going to build a model that schools want to pay for. And we're going to build a curriculum and a strategy with the resources and the training and everything that they need to go out there and justify spending thousands of dollars on this product and on this service. So that's what we did. And so it's turned into this incredible success because we now have an organization that is much more sustainable and much less reliant upon philanthropy or other people deciding, hey, this organization is doing good work or not. It's now the proof is in the pudding. Schools are saying, this is great, this is awesome, and we're going to pay for it.
Yeah. And then how has that been with like this kind of like Zoom learning? I'm sure the way the structure has been set up, it's kind of had to morph a little bit, but like you said, the foundation was already there.
Yeah. You can just be clear. I heard that question correct. Did it morph with what? With Zoom?
Yeah.
Like
not being in the classroom.
Yes, in the virtual settings.
Yeah,
for sure.
Virtual setting.
Yeah. It's arguably more important than ever.
Yeah.
Because again, our mission, our Northern Star is to empower America's youth to build positive relationships and become their best selves. And so kids need more help than ever being able to understand themselves, but also understand other people. They've gotten a lot less repetitions interacting with each other in person in the past year. But even prior to that, when you look at the data from the 90s versus the 2010s, I think it's the average kid in the United States has lost about 12 hours of free play per week over that 20-year or 25-year window. Wow. What that means is over the period of a lifetime is just do the math. That's basically 50 hours a month, 600 hours a year. And so from the age of 2 until 10, I mean, you're looking at, what's that, nearly 5,000 hours that kids used to just figure stuff out on their own, interact with each other. Yes, sometimes be mean or say some things that they shouldn't have, but then learn that there's real consequences for doing that. And now pre-COVID, again, they already lost a lot of those in-person interactions. We all know you can't, through a text message or social media, you can't extrapolate the emotions like you can in person or even on a Zoom. Yeah. So long answer to your question is that it's more critical than ever. And in this year where kids have had such little interaction with each other, or if they do, that people are wearing masks and all kinds of stuff that makes it harder for them to read emotions. This stuff is more important than ever and will be for a long time coming.
No, that's a solid point too. And it's just been this mental shift that I think everyone's had to experience over the last year, where we've had to change and look and understand these new beliefs and behaviors and how we adapt those into our lives. Is there any other thing within, say, the last 5 years that you found that some sort of new belief, behavior, habit that has really improved your life, or with the family, really anything?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'd say and I learned about this initially in 2014 with Tom Tierney, former CEO of Bain consulting firm, and then really started to implement it when I got out of the military. But you probably have heard before the Eisenhower box. Yep. And really thinking through how you prioritize your time. And he kind of breaks it into a 2x2 matrix of, is this urgent or not? Is this important or not? And, and I also learned this lesson from Jim Collins as well, but he actually tracks his time, not quite like a lawyer down to the 8 minutes or 12 minutes or whatever it is that lawyers do these days. I think it's 6 minutes. It's 1/10 of an hour. But he really tracks his time. How many of us actually track our time and know how we spend our time? Yeah. It's very very hazy and foggy for most people. So I don't get down to that level of 6 minutes or even 12. But I keep a pretty good finger on the pulse of, I spent too much time on email the past couple of days, or I spent not enough time exercising, in the past week, or even things like leisure, like golf. Like I love golf. I played like twice a year for like a long period of time. And in the past year, I've made it a priority to get out there like once a month,
That's awesome.
So just tracking those things becomes very important, and making sure that you have as much time as possible to spend on things that are important or not, they're urgent.
Right.
And especially when they're not urgent. And that's things like our recovery, our relationships, planning, reading books, prayer, solitude and reflection, eating healthy, exercise, like all those things like are part of that, what I call box 2, which is things that are important, but not urgent. And so the problem is you can just keep kicking the can down the road, because they're not urgent. And so that's been, that model and that framework has been transformational for me in terms of my life. It's helped me make decisions like getting rid of cable from the house, stripping most apps off my cell phone, all those kinds of things that are not important, but they were taking up a lot of my time mindlessly, and therefore got in the way of all those other activities.
No, that's one of those things that you don't think about, right? Everybody loves like playing and have a calendar and stuff, but you never really go back and revisit what you did, like, kind of like an AAR, after action review of, I really spent too much time on email, or I didn't spend enough time with the family or working out and getting what I really needed out of this. Yep. So that's big brain thinking. I love that. And that's something I'm going to start looking into, like it's cool to plan. It's great to plan, but I really need to visit, like, how did I do coming out of that? So is there, now that you have that ability, like you said, would you say golf is the skill that you're currently working on or tailoring, or is there another thing?
Yeah.
Is being a farmer, like
farmer. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, that's much more part of it is, so here on the farm, we've got 5 goats, 2 Great Pyrenees dogs, 9 ducks. We've got 25 chickens, 2 roosters and 23 layers, 4 pigs. And then meat birds, so we do meat chickens and then meat turkeys. And so, and then that doesn't even include the orchard, blueberries, apple trees, blueberry and strawberries, pear trees, peach trees, and then the vegetable garden. And then you got to like mow the pasture. And so, I mean, it's a fair amount of time, but if you read the foreword to Lead Yourself First, Jim Collins talks about Sam Walton used to have what he called tractor time. Which was like that time to really think through and just work his way through problems. And so I do a fair amount of my thinking and my decision making, while I'm doing chores around the farm or while I'm just on the property. And it's been really, really helpful. But going back to your question of like, that's like where I started out and we were a train wreck. I mean, we had coyote attacks and hawk attacks and it was like all these things went wrong in the first like 3 months out here. Our water had a huge algae bloom. We had a deep hornet's nest that was stinging us every time, and hornets hurt. This isn't like a bee sting. Your hand goes numb for like a day. That kind of stuff was all happening. We moved out here, and it was, looking back on it, it was like, woo, we don't know squat about how to live on the land. We moved out to 32 acres, and so that's definitely, I'm not sure if I call it a hobby, but I'd call it somewhere between a hobby and just like my daily life. And it's been humbling, but awesome at the same time.
No, that's awesome. So then we'll close out with the last question is, and I have an idea, but I want to hear it from you. How are you better than yesterday?
Well, I think first of all, like I think this concept of, constant improvement is huge. You often hear people say, hey, get 1% better every day. But if you get 1% better every day, like if you look at that, like you're like 5 times better, by the end of the year. So I tell people all the time, I think the equation is wrong. Can you get 1% better each month? Okay. Right. And so space it out a little bit more, because the idea, like if you're just trying to be very scientific and algorithmic about it, like getting 1% better every day, if you do the math, I mean, like you're like 5 times the person you were at the end of the year than you were before. So I think it's much more about gradual progress. And I think even if you get 1% better every month, you're going to be like, 27% or something like that better by the end of the year than what you were. But it's a great question. It's something I think that, hopefully I never stop grappling with until, I get ready to go to Sod City. You know, like I want to constantly be thinking about how to get better. You know, for me, I think that, you know, I think about it a lot of times like a tango, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You know, sometimes I make great progress with my relationship with technology and digital. Like sometimes I'll be like great about like shutting my phone off from 5 to 8 o'clock at night, literally turning it off and boom. And then I find myself other, you know, days like keeping it on and I got an important message I'm looking for or whatever, and I stick to it. And so even though like that is a tango, right? I make some progress and I step back. I think that's where I, you know, continue to strive to be better every single day. And I think that we all, almost all of us, I think I speak for almost all people when I say like our relationship with technology and how we utilize it, how we ensure that it doesn't put distance between us and the people that we love and the people right in front of us. I think that's a really important question we should all be asking. It's not linear though. You're not going to just keep getting better. I think you get better, then you make some mistakes and it's okay. Then you get back on the train. And that to me is a huge part of it, Tony, is working to get better so that I don't allow the information age and the ability to consume article after post, after podcast, after you name it. You can just eat, you know, information. And while you can put it under the umbrella of I'm making myself better. Yes, you are, but it's not all better because there's a cost to your incessant obsession with information. Right. And so I read a great article, you know, a piece by Cal Newport the other day, who wrote a great book called Digital Minimalism, talking about, it's called In Defense of Thinking. And he talks about Ernest Hemingway, who quoted something along the lines of, I spend a lot of my time thinking and a little of my time writing. You know, like, I think we really want to promote like more time thinking, more time engaging with ideas and less time just doing the work, because a lot of the work that we do is actually busy work. And it makes us feel good, but it's not actually making us better. And so that to me is my answer to your question about trying to get better, is that little bit of improvement on my relationship with technology and how I make it work for me and not against me.
Right. And then having that grace with yourself to realize that constant growth is going to come in time. It doesn't need to come every day or every. Correct. Look at month wise.
100%.
Great insight. That's phenomenal. I really think like that's another thing you put on the bulletin board, and every time you get down, you look up and you're like, you know what, like we still got the month. Sometimes you are going to take that step back in the tango, but the dance is still going. You got to keep moving.
I can't read it because it's all faded out. It says, warning, use me, don't abuse me. Right? Like it's
right on the iPhone.
Right on the iPhone, you know, but it's like, that's just the whole thing is like, it's very easy, you know, to get frustrated by, and then the negative self-talk starts of, oh, I was on my diet, or I had a good exercise plan and then I slipped up, and you can beat yourself up, or you can just take it in stride and then get back on, you know? And I think that's how it is with our use of technology. We're going to make some mistakes, and because I never feel good, right? After 30, if I go through like a 20-minute scrolling session of Instagram stories and Instagram, I just sit there, I'm like, ugh. Like it's just, I feel like this. I did like I just had like a 2 donuts or or a big Whopper meal, and 1,400 calories in one setting, and it's like, oh man, I feel awful. Right. So it's like, don't just keep eating those value meals or those donuts. Get back on the train with some eggs and an omelet, the next day. And I think that analogy, is again how I think about a lot of this stuff.
No, I love that. So where can people find you? Where's the best place if they want to reach out? I mean, we have all Team RWB, Positivity Project.
Yeah, like I said, I'm on all those different, I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Erwin RWB on Instagram and on Twitter. So both of those places, but that's where I push probably the most stuff would be increasingly on LinkedIn, but a lot of times on Instagram or on Twitter. But I try to minimize how much I push and how much I interact. So I give myself kind of a certain bandwidth in terms of time, but that's where you can find information.
Awesome. Mike, thank you again so much for your time. Really appreciate it. This was phenomenal.
Absolutely, Tony. It's been great, man. Thanks a lot.
I don't know what you've been told, Sixers, but the lawyers would like us to remind you that the views, opinions, and comments expressed on the Got Your Six podcast are solely those of the hosts or guests, to include current and previous Department of Defense employees, and should in no way be considered the opinions of or endorsements on behalf of the Department of Defense or any of its components, divisions, contractors, or other current and previous staff members.